I've been an over-the-road trucker for close to 20 years now. It's a lonely job, but I prefer the solitude. Just me, the open road, and the soothing crackle of my trusty CB radio. Until one day the soothing crackle turned sinister. It was a typical Thursday night, truck humming along Highway 80. The sky was ink black, punched through with cold stars. I'd been chasing the taillights of some long-gone rig, the monotonous drone of the diesel my only company. I was about to switch on a late-night radio show when I heard it. The static on the CB radio cut out abruptly, replaced by a voice. The sound was tinny and distorted, the words almost swallowed by the hiss of white noise. "Breaker 19, it said. That's trucker code, a general call to all CB users on the channel. Nothing unusual, but it was the hour that got to me. CB chatter was a daytime thing. I reached for the mic, curiosity piqued. "This is Lone Ranger," I said, using my handle. "Go ahead, Breaker 19. The voice that answered was chillingly cold. "Wreck ahead, Lone Ranger. Jackknife semi. Mile marker 185. Lane blocked." I frowned. That was odd. I was approaching mile marker 185, and there wasn't a soul in sight, let alone a wreck. "You sure about that, Breaker 19? I asked. "Road's clear as a bell." No answer. Just the hiss of static. I shrugged it off. Some prankster trying to spook the late-night drivers. But as my headlights swept across the mile marker 185 sign, my heart leaped into my throat. There, sprawled across the asphalt, was the twisted wreckage of a jackknife semi. I hit the brakes hard, the truck shuddering as it strained to halt. Somehow I managed to stop just in time, my headlights bathing the wreck in harsh white light. The cab was crushed like a soda can, the driver's side door hanging open. There was no sign of the driver. Suddenly the radio crackled to life again. "Watch out, Lone Ranger. Black ice, mile marker 192. Slow down." I stared at the radio, my heart pounding. There was no way they could have known about the wreck. But what about the black ice? Was it another accurate prediction? With a shiver, I decided to slow down. The wreck in front of me a grim reminder of the danger. As I passed mile marker 192, my rig suddenly lurched, sliding across the road. Black ice, invisible and lethal as a rattlesnake. Somehow I kept control, the truck shuddering as it regained traction. The CB radio remained silent, but the damage was done. I was rattled, my eyes darting between the radio and the seemingly endless road. The night wore on, the radio delivering 3 more predictions: a stranded motorist, a blown tire, and an overpass clogged with late-night construction. Each prediction was dead on. I drove through the night, a cold knot of fear in my gut. Morning came, and with it a sense of unease. The voice hadn't spoken since the last prediction, leaving me in silence. I decided to switch channels to escape the feeling of being watched. But the voice followed me, every channel, every frequency. "Last stop, Lone Ranger," it finally said, a note of finality in its tone. "Diner at exit 31, you need to eat." I was approaching exit 31. There was a diner there, a favorite stop of mine. I was hungry, the events of the night having drained me. The voice was right, I did need to eat, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being led, of being herded. Yet I saw no harm in stopping. As I walked into the diner, I noticed the place was empty except for the cook and a waitress. The moment I sat down, the power in the diner went out. The only light came from the harsh neon sign outside the window, casting an eerie glow. And then, I heard it. The same voice from the CB radio, but this time it came from behind me. I turned around slowly, my heart pounding. I expected to see a man, perhaps the prankster who'd been tormenting me all night. But there was no one there, just a radio, sitting on a table, static filling the room. It crackled once, then fell silent. The silence seemed to stretch on forever, the neon light casting long, dancing shadows. I sat there alone, staring at the radio. The voice, the predictions, the eerie diner, they all swirled in my head, a vortex of unanswered questions. But as I sat there, I realized I wasn't looking for answers. I was too scared of what they might be. I left the diner, leaving my uneaten meal behind. I climbed into my truck, the cab now seeming like the only safe place. As I pulled onto the highway, the CB radio crackled to life. "Safe travels, Lone Ranger," the voice said. "Until next time." And just like that, the voice was gone. But its echo remains, a chilling reminder of that sinister night on the road. Now I drive in silence, the CB radio off. The solitude is no longer comforting. It's a reminder of the voice, the predictions, and the terrifying unknown. The open road is no longer a sanctuary. It's a mystery, a sinister stretch of unknown that I navigate with trepidation, a lone ranger haunted by a voice on the radio. The mountain never forgives. That's what I'd learned after years driving freight over its high, capricious passes. Through snaking turns and teetering cliffs, my truck was more than just a vehicle. It was a steel lifeline, a defiant bulwark against the wild, untamed elements. It was a normal job at first, a routine delivery. The dispatcher's voice had crackled over the radio, directing me to haul a load of construction materials through the serpentine passes of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I was no stranger to these routes. Their treacherous hairpin turns and the steep gradients were etched into my mind. But nothing could prepare me for what lay ahead that day. The clouds were low, pregnant with foreboding as I set off. As I ascended, the lush foliage gave way to stark granite. The road ahead, a slender ribbon of black against the imposing wall of stone. My grip on the wheel tightened, knuckles pale, as I maneuvered through the narrow pass. My eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, where my cargo of pipes, concrete, and iron rods looked secure under the heavy tarp. Yet, the image of a large black crow perched atop my load sent an odd shiver through me. Its obsidian eyes met mine, holding an unspoken message before it took flight, disappearing into the gloom. That's when it started, the first sign of unnatural danger. My truck's lights flickered, casting eerie dancing shadows on the surrounding rock faces. Suddenly the radio buzzed, shattering the silence with a cacophony of static. I tried to reply, only to receive more static in response. Unsettled, I reached for my satellite phone, but its screen remained ominously dark. But I kept going, the sense of unease growing with each passing mile. A solitary journey had turned into a race against unseen threats. As dusk crept in, the weather took a vicious turn. The sky, once a delicate gray, churned a malicious black, and the first snowflakes began to fall. Snowflakes turned into a flurry, obscuring my vision. The windshield wipers worked tirelessly, but each swipe seemed futile against the mounting snowfall. The route ahead, once a precarious black line, had blurred into a treacherous white nightmare. As the road slickened with fresh snow, I felt the rig sway dangerously. Panic set in. No signal, no lights. And now the truck seemed to be losing its grip on the icy path. It was a losing battle against the unforgiving mountain. Then I saw it through the flurry, an immense shadow lumbering onto the road, its form indistinct but terrifyingly massive. My heart pounded as I slammed the brakes. But the truck, weighed down by its hefty cargo, didn't stop. With a deafening crunch of metal, the truck rammed into the figure, skidding dangerously on the icy road. A guttural roar filled the air, echoing off the mountainside. Fear gripped me, freezing me in place as I stared at the dark figure through the cracked windshield. It was massive, shrouded in darkness and snow, but its form was definitely not human. My eyes widened as it lifted an enormous hand, fingers ending in what appeared to be jagged talons. It bellowed again, a sound that seemed to shake the mountain itself. Terrified, I threw the truck into reverse, tires spinning wildly, the engine roaring in protest. It backed up, dragging whatever monstrous thing was in front, before finally wrenching free. The creature let out a painful howl that reverberated in the confined cabin of my truck, but I had no time to process it. I steered the truck around the hulking figure, my eyes never leaving the beast as I sped down the road. The truck wailed in protest as I forced it onwards, faster and faster. Behind, I could still hear the echoing cries of the creature. My mind raced as I replayed the horrifying image, the giant shadow, the guttural roar, the talons. Was it a bear? A mountain lion? But I knew in my gut it was something more sinister, something not of this world. Exhausted and terrified, I continued the descent, the howling wind and pounding snow, a stark reminder of my lonely journey. Finally, the relief washed over me as the neon lights of a roadside diner appeared through the blizzard. I parked the truck, its battered front end a testament to my close encounter. I stumbled into the diner, greeted by warmth and concerned faces. With a cup of hot coffee, I began to recount my tale, their expressions turning from worry to disbelief. Hours later, when the storm had calmed, I returned to my truck. As I climbed in, ready to complete my delivery, I glanced back into the rearview mirror. The cargo was undisturbed. The crow was gone, but claw marks, like deep gashes on a stone, were etched into the steel frame of my cargo. A chilling reminder of my encounter with the unknown, an affirmation of the truth I dared not to believe. The mountain never forgives, and it harbors more than just dangerous roads and treacherous weather. The very stone seemed to whisper a warning, beware of what lurks on the edge. As I pulled back onto the snow-cleared road, I knew one thing for certain. The mountain pass was a living, breathing entity, and it held secrets that were best left undiscovered. I've been a truck driver for over a decade, riding high in the cab of my 18-wheeler, rolling across the vastness of America. I've seen the breathtaking spectrum of this country, from the scorching Arizona deserts to the blizzard-struck passes of the Rockies. I've met all kinds of people too, but there's one journey that will haunt me till my last breath. It was just another summer night, the tires humming rhythmically against the asphalt of Highway 50, dubbed the loneliest road in America. My cargo was a shipment of electronics destined for some big-box retailer in Ely, Nevada. The first sign of unease was a voice crackling over the CB radio. An unknown handle, Raven. He had a gravelly voice, like his vocal cords were rubbed raw with sandpaper. We talked about road conditions, fuel prices, nothing unusual. Then he mentioned hitchhikers, said he'd been picking them up along the stretch for years. An odd hobby, but not my business, so I kept my thoughts to myself. I stopped for the night at an old rest stop, empty save for a couple of semis parked in the far corner. My eyelids were heavy and I needed a few hours of shut-eye. That's when I saw her, a young girl, barely more than a teenager, standing on the fringe of the fluorescent halo of the rest stop. She was visibly scared and cold, asked for a ride. I had a policy against picking up hitchhikers, but something about her desperate state got to me. I agreed to drop her at the next town. It was past midnight when we hit the road again. The girl, Jenny, was a runaway. Said she'd been hitchhiking for days. She looked it too. Her clothes were disheveled, and there was a certain wildness in her eyes. The CB radio crackled back to life. It was Raven again. He sounded drunk, slurring his words. He asked if I had seen any hitchhikers. A shiver crept up my spine as I glanced at Jenny. I lied and said no. He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the cab. Over the next few hours, Raven shared stories of his hitchhikers, how they mysteriously disappeared after he dropped them off, how they left their stuff in his truck. I listened, my heart pounding as the innocuous conversation started to look like something more sinister. By dawn, we crossed the state line into Nevada. My guts churned as we passed another abandoned car on the side of the road, the third one that night. Then Jenny revealed that she had hitched a ride with Raven before me. He had seemed creepy, she said, and had shown her a knife. She ran when he stopped for gas. Panic surged through me. I tried contacting the highway patrol, but my signal was weak, patchy. The dusty vistas around us seemed more isolating than beautiful, and each passing mile seemed to echo with an unspoken threat. The CB radio hissed back to life. Raven's voice, full of dangerous delight, taunted, "Picked up any lost souls yet?" We came upon a small motel just off the highway near Ely. I decided to stop and get help. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched as we pulled in. The parking lot was near empty, save for a couple of beaten-up cars, and a black semi, its chrome fenders gleaming ominously in the morning light. My breath hitched. Raven's truck, my heart hammered in my chest as I ushered Jenny inside, promising to return quickly. I raced back to my truck, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. As I turned around, I froze. Raven was there, standing just a few feet away, knife glinting ominously in his hand. He looked exactly like his voice, grizzled, scarred, and terrifying. "I don't like liars," he said, his voice as chilling as a winter wind. Before I could react, a thunderous gunshot echoed through the parking lot. Raven crumpled to the ground, a look of surprise etched on his face. I spun around to see a couple of local cops, guns drawn, faces stern. Turns out, the motel owner had recognized Raven from a police bulletin. He'd been on the run for months, suspected of multiple murders along Highway 50, each linked to hitchhikers who'd vanished. I gave up long-haul routes after that. The open road had lost its charm for me. I still dream of that highway, of Raven's voice crackling over the CB radio. But the worst part, the part that leaves me cold and sweating in the dead of the night, is the question that haunts me. How many Jennies had there been before the one I picked up? And how many were there after?